Thank you for joining in today, everybody. My name is Michelle, and I am a lead Bright specialist here with the Bright HR team. And I am here today to take us through the Blip app a little bit more in depth. So you might be able to see the screen already. I've got my phone hooked up to the system here. It is a little bit of a delay, so you might see me looking down at my phone, looking up at the screen to make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. But today is to give you a few pointers on how you can be using the Blip app and I guess the different scenarios or different techniques you can be using to help get the employees clocking in and out and getting that timesheet from the employees. So first thing I want to mention before we hop into it all is if you do have questions as we're going throughout, feel free to pop them into the little question section you should see somewhere on your page. Feel free to type them in. If the question is sort of relevant to what we're looking at here and now, then I will talk into it a little bit more. If it's something that I might need to come to back at the end of the session, then I will sort of leave it towards the end, but I'll let you know that. But look, let's hop straight into it. You might be able to see my screen there. I am on the Blip app. So if you're wanting to sort of follow along and set up for your business as I'm doing the webinar, feel free to have your phone. You're just needing to download the Blip app and log in using your Bright HR details. So I guess that is the main starting point with all of this. Even if you're just primarily on board with the Bright HR software system to be using the clocking in and out function, you will still need to add your employees through the Bright HR side of things, because where they register and they create their login details for that component is where, so that registration link is what they will use to log into Blip. I'll also mention that the same permission levels carry across here, so you can't kind of tweak permission levels solely for Blip. It will be the permission levels they have on Bright HR are carried onto Blip. So if you are an admin on Bright HR, you've got that main registration for your system, you've been adding employees, then you're the person who's going to be able to come into the system here and add locations and have a bit of a look at who's clocked in or clock somebody in if they've forgotten and things like that I'll be talking you through today. Your employees are really only going to have a couple of options here to clock in and clock out based on the setup that you're using. So you can see here, I'm getting a message on the page to tell me that I can't clock in or out at the moment. That's because I haven't created a location to be able to clock in and out from, as well as you can see there, I haven't enabled flexible clocking. So there's a few components you're probably getting an idea of here. If this is the first time you're seeing it, or if you've had to play around, you've probably noticed that there are a few ways that you can actually set up the Blip app. So the first thing that I'm going to mention is that you can add in locations, you can use QR codes, you can use flexible clocking. And I'm going to explain all three today, but to sort of be able to showcase them all, I guess, in their full sense, I'm actually going to start with the flexible clocking option. Now, the flexible clocking option is going to be relevant to any businesses that are a bit more flexible or a bit more off-site. If you do a lot of work on different job sites, or you've got maybe sales staff that go from point A to point B, just anybody who's not sort of at a central location, but you're wanting to track the hours that they're working, you're wanting to track when they've arrived at this job versus that job, then the flexible clocking is probably going to be the most suitable for you. So I'm going to show you that one. For flexible clocking, you're going to go to the settings on the bottom of the app, and then you'll see the company settings tab on the top right. So through here, you'll have the option to switch flexible clocking on for everybody, which is that first option, or you could hand pick specific employees. So again, if you're a mixture, maybe you're like a workshop and kind of logistics business, maybe you do have some people that are based solely at one address, but then there are a couple who go and drive out on site or finish off site for the day, maybe the flexible clocking is going to be the best option for you, because I'll show you what we'll do. I'm just going to assign this to all employees for now. It'll save into place, and I'll click back to the home button, and now you can see instead of having a clock out button that was grayed out, instead of having that little prompt telling me I couldn't clock in, I now have a clock in flexible button. When I click into that, so basically I don't need anything set up. I could just switch on that flexible clocking, and I can now click clock in flexible, and it's going to ask me to input where I am starting my day. Now, I have the Google Maps function that you might see on the right-hand side, so I can click there and sort of use Google Maps to pinpoint the precise address or name, but I can also actually just click into location name and free text type, whether it's a job number, job 123 is where I'm clocking into, whether it's the actual address or a client name. That's a free text box. So you would probably be dictating what you want your employees to be labeling when they're clocking in. And I'll click clock in, and it's going to register me at that job. Now, what else you'll be able to see here, once you do clock in, it's going to have the name, or it's having the time that I've clocked in. It's got the name of the location I've clocked in at. And the little reminder there is my reminder to clock out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the next couple of steps as well. But you are going to be able to set up reminders to clock out, for example, at 5 p.m. or whatever time you generally finish. You'll also notice at the bottom here, we have the option to add a note for your manager. So this will be present at the start, at the middle, at the end of your shifts, and even after. So if they're needing to let you know, I've clocked in at 2:06, maybe I can put in a note to say running 6 minutes late. And I can write that in here, or somewhat write it. I'm running 6 minutes late there, and I can click got it, and that will save that into the system for me. And I've now clocked in. And what you'll notice is I now have the clock in button actually saying clock out, flexible still, because I don't have any addresses, I don't have any set locations that I can clock in and out from, but I can clock myself in and out from wherever I'm going for that day. The other thing you might realize is where I have my little picture there and it's got my name, I've also got a start break button. So when I do go ahead and take my lunch break, so the breaks you really want to use for any unpaid breaks, when you are going ahead to do to track any unpaid breaks, instead of the employee clocking out, clocking back in and whatnot, we do want them to press that start break button, because the start break button is going to actually, in the long run, when you pull the data from the system, you're going to be able to see the hours Michelle has worked, but you're also going to be able to see the hours Michelle has worked excluding that break. So if you have unpaid breaks, getting them to click the start break button and end break button is going to make things a little easier. Now you might be able to see there the notification that has just come up as well. So I'm glad that that's come up, because when you start your break, just like you can see, we've started our break at 2:08, so we've done a hard working day of 2 minutes and we've gone on break. And then I've got that little reminder to clock out of my break, or to finish my break at 2:38. And I'll show you where that comes from in a moment. But again, we can set reminders for when our breaks, or for how long our breaks usually are and how long our shifts usually are, so the system can prompt us with that information. So I'm going to click got it for here. All right, so I'm currently on break and clocked in. Now, when I finish my break, I can go ahead and click the end break button, whether it is, within that time frame and reminder that we set up, or whether it's outside of that, that doesn't impact too much. It's just that I will get another push notification at 2:38 because of that timer that you saw there, to say, hey, Michelle, your break should be finishing around now. Did you need to end that break? And then I would come in and end that. But I am going to do that for now. I'm going to end that break. Again, it's given me the little pop-up. I took a 1 minute break. So we've worked 2 minutes and taken a 1 minute break. We've got a good day going. I'm going to click got it, and that's going to close off the break. Now, I am going to close off this shift here with the flexible clocking, because then I want to show you a few other things. So I'm going to click clock out now. Clock out flexible, and you'll see the same pop-up come up when we clocked in. where are we finishing the day? So we might have started at job 1, 2, 3, but then we might have traveled to different locations, and maybe I'm finishing up at job 4, 5, 6. So I can list that in here. And keep in mind that you can clock in and out as many times as you like in a day. So if you were wanting to track each job that somebody has gone to throughout the day, then it would just be a matter of getting them to click clock in, clock out when they start at job 1, when they finish job 1. Do the same when they start job 2 and clocking in, and then clocking out when they finish job 2, and so forth. So you will be able to have as many shifts as you like within the Blip app. It's just going to be, I guess, dependent on what you're looking for. If you're wanting an overall of how many hours has this employee worked, you're not too fussed about knowing what site or, how long they spent on each location, then maybe you're just doing that initial clock in at the start of shift, clock out at the end of shift. But if you are then wanting to narrow it down a bit more and have the precise, maybe it's going to help with invoicing how long you spent on each job, then you would do those little brackets, is what I like to call them, clock in, clock out from each different location. And look, you can mix and match. So you might start off getting them comfortable with just clocking in and out at the start of their day. And as they get into that routine, maybe then you're going to get them doing specific jobs. All right, so we've clocked out. You can see my little note there that I had left at the start. I could now add more notes. So finishing up early or something like that, I can list in there, but I'm going to click got it for now, because what I've shown you there is one of the options that you can be using, the flexible clocking. So again, just recapping, that's going to be handy for anyone who has a bit more off-site work, ad hoc work, where you don't have set locations where the employees might be starting or finishing their days. And we switch that on in the settings and up here in company settings. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch off the flexible clocking for now, because I'm going to talk you through the adding of locations, because that one tends to be a little bit more routine. For a lot of the clients we speak with, the geolocation, as we call it, does tend to be a bit more consistent, or at least used in one way or another. You usually always have like a main base that you can be adding in. And to add that in, to then show you how to clock in and out from that, I'm actually going to switch off the flexible clocking for now. I'm going to go back to the home button so you can see the same message pops up. So if you've just opened your Blip app and you haven't actioned anything on there, you're probably going to be seeing that message there, just like we saw earlier when we started. I can't clock in and out at the moment. I don't have flexible clocking on. I don't have any locations added in, but I am going to add in a location now. So to add in our locations, we're going to click to the More button on the bottom right. We're then going to have a Locations tab in here. So I'll click into that, and you'll see a little plus button. I'll click on the plus button and it's going to bring me across to Google Maps. So it literally is like doing a GPS search of an address. Now you can type in the address at the top, or you can actually click on the map as to where you want to place your geofence. So what I'll show you is, let's type in 180 Thomas Street is where we are at the moment in Haymarket. I can click into that and you'll see that the pin has dropped there. Now, what you want to make sure is you're the blue dot, and you want to make sure that the pink pin and the pink radius is covering that blue dot, because what this is doing is the employees will only be able to clock in when they're within that pink radius. So you do want to make sure that the blue dot is within that pink radius. Now, if for whatever reason you've typed in the address and you feel like it's a little bit off center from where you actually are, usually that happens in maybe new development areas, or if the Google Maps hasn't sort of mapped it out correctly. So I don't know how if it's going to be really relevant to yourselves, but if you've got more rural places or whatnot, it might be that you're needing to correct it slightly. Now, the tip here with correcting the geofence is just tapping. If it's just slightly off, what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to tap on the map screen quite far away. So I've just tapped to the right, and then you can sort of drag the screen back and say, yep, I want it right there, and just click back. So if you're doing little changes, so I'm clicking, I don't know if it's showing up on the screen, but I'm clicking just to the right of the blue dot, which is myself. It's not shifting anything. You actually need to make quite a drastic change to then put it back where it needs to be. Okay. And then you can see underneath here the location details element. Now the location name is going to be one of the key things you're wanting to populate, because this is the name that's going to appear when the employees are clocking in and out. It's also the name that's going to appear when you're pulling these timesheets. So if you have two different locations, you have a Sydney and a Melbourne location, maybe you're going to name this Sydney. So I'm just going to call this Bright HR, oops, if I can spell, Sydney, perfect, and have that like that. The address is already populated because we searched it from Google Maps. If it's not populated, then just fill it in. And then the fence radius. So the fence radius, you'll see it go up and down. That's how much leeway you want to give the employee to be able to clock in and out from there. So the smaller you make it, obviously, the more precise you have to be with where you are to clock in and out, and the smallest is 50 meters. The widest you can do is a kilometre. You might not want to give them that much leeway depending on your surroundings. If it's like us here, we've got a few cafes and shops around, so we might actually make it a bit smaller. We then have the options of setting it public or private. Now the public versus private is just referring to the employees you've added into your Bright HR system. So if you leave this as public, it means all the employees you've added into your system will be able to see this address. So if this is something like your key business address, like your cafe or your shop or your factory, your warehouse, then we do want to leave this as public. The private option is there where you would then handpick the select employees you might see there who needs to see this address. So you might use the private option if you do have maybe some work from home elements, you want them to be able to clock in and out from home, or if you're more in that care kind of NDIS industry and you have, sensitive information with participants and you only have a set group of employees that work with this participant, you don't need the others to see that address. Maybe in that case, you would use the private option. For today, I'm going to leave this as public and I'm going to save this into place with the check mark. We will come back to that hide fence option. I will explain that in a moment, but I'm going to leave it unchecked for now and save it into place by clicking the pink little check mark there. All right, we've added our location. We can see it at the top of the list. And if I click back to the home button on the left-hand side, you can see there that I can now clock in. And it doesn't have the clock in flexible written under it because the clock in flexible will only appear when there's no radiuses or fences set up. All right, so now when I need to go and clock in, I can merely walk into the zone and click clock in, and I don't actually have to type in an address name, or you don't see that little Google pop-up that you saw before. Because I've set up the location, it names it for me. It tells me what time I've clocked in. I still have the option to leave a note here. So if again, I'm leaving a note to say I'm running late or I plan on doing XYZ tasks today, I can leave that in the little prompt below and then I can click got it. And now I'm clocked in. So the pink button there has changed to be a clock out button. The same thing goes with what we did before. We can start our break when we need to start our break. We can end break as well as then clock out for our shift. So I'll do again just a quick reference for the start break, end break in case somebody missed it before, but we can click the start break button. So we've clocked in, we've done a hard work of 1 minute this time, and you can see there the notification that I've just got of the reminder that I'm going to need to clock out of my break at 2:49. That's because, and again, I'll show you in a moment, I've set up in the settings that I have a half-hour unpaid break. So the system knows, so it can prompt me. So what I can do here is I can click got it. I don't think you can see it there because the screen is only capturing the main part of my screen, but in my notification bar, I've actually got a counter going to say that I've got 20 minutes left of my break or whatever it may be. It sort of progresses, and then when I have come to the end of that break, again, it would give me that push notification that you saw sort of overlay on the page there to tell me, hey, Michelle, your break's up. You might need to be heading back to work and ending your break now. So again, let's do a similar thing. Let's pretend we have ended that break. So end break was a quick short one. Now, generally speaking, you really only want to use that break section for the unpaid breaks. Again, you don't need to be doing this for toilet breaks or morning tea. That doesn't need to be included in this because we're only wanting to include the unpaid breaks. So I'll click got it. You can see there I'm still on my shift. I've still clocked in, but I've got the radius set up. The other thing I wanted to mention here, the benefit of having you add in the addresses in the Blip app is that I'm not going to be able to show you here at the moment because it's not going to be, you're not going to see me sort of walking around town, but when you walk into the zone, so when you walk into that pink radius, you get a notification to say, hey, you've stepped into Bright HR Sydney in this instance. Did you need to clock in? So if I wasn't clocked in at the moment, it would give me the prompt to clock in once I step into that zone. The same as if I'm still currently clocked in like I am now, and if I was to wander out of that zone, I would be getting a notification to say, hey, Michelle, you've stepped out of the zone. Did you forget to clock out? So if you're sort of worried about the employees forgetting to clock in and out, if you've been doing a paper timesheet at the moment and they forget to write down the numbers there or whatnot, how are they going to be doing this? I will say it's not going to happen overnight. Unfortunately, we're all human. We all forget things. It is a matter of getting it into routine. So if you are getting these prompts and reminders, that's going to definitely help. Hey, you're walking into the zone. Hey, you're walking out of zone. Open up the app and click clock in. It's definitely reminders that will help. But you also might want to use this alongside what you currently use for the first couple of weeks to get them comfortable with it. Give them a bit of leeway to get used to it, clocking in and out, but you're still running alongside what you do have, so you're still maintaining the records that you need for your day-to-day. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click clock out. That's going to clock me out of that shift. Again, I've got the space to leave notes. I can see I've done a 4-minute shift here. I can click got it. My day is up. It's a long 4-minute of a shift for me today. But on that note that we were just talking about with reminders and prompts for the employees to remember to clock in. The other way that you can be using Blip app, the Blip app, is with our QR codes. So that's the next thing I want to show you. Now, in order to get a QR code, you do need to add in a location. So what you would do is you go back to the More button, you go back into locations, and because we've already added this location, all you would do is click onto that location. You can see the fence radius option, but you can also click to the QR code to generate the QR code. Download this, save this, send this to your phone, send this to a Bluetooth printer, print it out, and you'd be able to put that in a spot where the employees walk past at the start, end of their shifts. And I guess it's more that visual cue. So again, if you're needing that help in prompting the employees to remember to clock in and out those first couple of weeks, we do find that a lot of the people using Blip do go for a QR code for that visual cue. It's definitely going to help them remember to clock in and out. It's also nice and easy to just, you've added in the location, just download that. Now, I don't have a QR code set up. I didn't actually have time to print one out to show you that clocking in and out. But what I will do is I'm going to go back to the home button on the bottom left and just show you, you should be able to see at the top of the screen, we're on the map button, but there is an option just next to it that says scan at the very top of the page. So if I click to scan, that's just going to bring up my camera from my phone and I would be able to scan a QR code. So you're seeing like my laptop at the moment, but if I had a QR code, I could scan that and that would just register me as clocked in. And then again, I would be able to start break, I'd be able to end break, I'd be able to clock out scanning that QR code, but it would just be a bit more visual and maybe an easier prompt for the employees. Okay, now you can definitely use a combination of all three of those ways of using Blip. You can use the flexible clocking for anybody who's more off-site. You don't have set addresses that you can add in for them to clock in and out from. You can use the flexible clocking for them. You can use the geofences. You can add in as many geofences as you like. if you've got those key locations that people might need to clock in and out from, even if you are like a warehouse sort of factory or construction type industry, and maybe your local Bunnings or your local tool shop is a place where the employees might start their day every now and again. Add that into the app. Add it as, you know, the name of the shop so that you know where Michelle was on that morning when she's clocked in at 9 a.m. If you ever need to go back to that data, you will see that she's actually clocked in at that shop, and that's, you know, where she started for that day. It is also a good health and safety element. You'll know where your employees are at any given point. So, you know, if there is ever an evacuation or a drill or something like that, you'll actually be able to reference the who's in button at the bottom of the app that you might be able to see there. So the who's in button is just going to show you who's currently clocked in, where they're clocked in at, and if they're clocked out. So you can see there, we've got one clocked in, and then we've got the rest of ourselves clocked out. Now, the other thing that you can do from this page is, let's say you have an employee come into work and they say, I've forgotten my phone, I can't clock in today. So what you would be able to do as the admin on the system, again, you can click the pink button on the bottom right, and that will ask you to clock this employee in. So you'll select who you're clocking in and where you're clocking them in at. So let's say I'm clocking in Charlotte. Where are we clocking her in at? We've just got the one location at the moment, so we'll clock her in there, clock in the user. Now again, we can only do this from our perspective as that highest access. You can see now that she has clocked in, okay? So that is one advantage as well. If somebody has forgotten to clock in or clock out, you'll have that option. So they would need to message you or dictate that outside of the app. So if it's somebody who has forgotten to clock out, for example, they've left, they didn't see the prompt that they got, they disregarded it, they had their notifications off or whatever it may be, maybe they're going to send you a text to say, hey, Michelle, I forgot to clock out today. Do you mind hopping onto the app and doing that for me? I would be able to come in and clock that person out from this view here, okay? Simply clicking on Charlotte's name, for example, and then I can click to clock out the user. And she's now clocked out. Perfect. So that's another option that you have there. I'm going to go back to the home button for a moment because there were a few other things that I wanted to talk about with the geofences and the QR code option. So if you recall, I'm going to head back into how we created this location. So we went to the More button, we went into Locations. It's brought me back to that QR code, which is perfect because what I wanted to do was clicking on the pencil that you might see on the top right of the app. Brings me back to edit this location. Now, the reason I'm coming back here is because I wanted to bring back to the hide fence option just at the end of the fence radius, so just along here at the far right of the fence radius. I mentioned the hide fence option before. Now, the hide fence option is there if you solely want the employees to be able to clock in and out using the QR code. So if you don't want them to have a fence option, you want them to physically walk into the building, scan that QR code to register them as clocked in, then you are going to hide the fence. Okay, now keep in mind, if you do hide the fence, they're not getting that prompt when they walk into the zone because there is no fence to have a prompt with. It does mean they need to walk into the building and scan that QR code. Okay, so that's that hide fence option, and then you would save that into place. For today, I'm going to leave that visible because I don't have the QR code, so clocking in and out will be a little bit difficult for me if I don't have the QR code, but just to highlight that you will be able to hide the fence if you're wanting to use solely the QR code. And the other thing I'll mention with the QR code is you might see the option there for new code. You can renew these codes. So if you wanted to refresh the code for whatever reason, you can do new code and get a new QR code. The old one becomes redundant. If they tried to scan the old one, they'd get like a sorry, whoops, something has gone wrong. Please contact your admin. So they wouldn't be able to clock in like that. Okay. So keep that in mind as well if you're ever regenerating a new QR code. I'm going to click the back button here to come back to our locations. You can see there that it got updated. because I wanted to mention another option for using Blip, still in the methods that we've discussed already. But what I'm going to show you now is kind of what we reference as job tagging. This is going to be helpful for anything that might be sort of, I guess, like tasks that you might want the employees to clock in and out from. So kind of like I was saying at the start, if you're like a construction type business and you go to job 1, job 2, job 3, you want to track the hours spent at each of those jobs. Maybe you're not necessarily in a construction field, but maybe you have projects or tasks that need to be worked on and you want to see how much time is being worked on each of them. This might apply a little bit towards that. It's what we call job tagging and job layering or fence layering. So what we can do is we've got our one location in there. I can then click in to add another location. But what I can do is I can actually add in a location exactly the same as what we've just added. Perfect. So it's going to be the exact same location, but I'm going to change the name. Oops. Let's just say task 1 as example. Okay, everything else is going to remain the same. The address, the fence radius, it's public. So I want all the team to be able to clock in and out from this. And I'm going to save it into place with the pink check mark. Because what I want to show you is when you've added 2 locations at the same location, when you go back to the home button on the bottom left, you can see there that they've kind of layered. It wasn't exactly precisely at the location because I moved the first one and back again. But what I want to show you is if I go to clock in now, what happens is it actually becomes like a drop down or kind of like a select which one you're clocking into. So if you do have, whether it's you're wanting to track the people who are clocking into their kitchen shift versus their bar shift, or like I said, task 1 versus task 2, or you have an office and a warehouse and you want to log them clearly and sort of separately, this is probably going to be the best way to do that because I can clock in at task 1 and I've clocked in, and again, I can leave my notes and things like that through here. But this is really just going to help overall with your timesheets. When you pull this data from the system, if you're needing that information, how many hours, how much time did Michelle spend on task 1 during, this date range, you're going to be able to sort of see that a bit clearer than just having Michelle clocked in at Bright HR Sydney. I don't know what job she worked on, what tasks she worked on, or how long she spent on each task. You can have it in this sense as well. I'm going to click got it and close that off. The same thing will go for starting break, ending break. Clocking out will again give me the 2 options to clock out. So again, if you were wanting to track task 1, task 2 throughout the day, you would do a clock in when you start on task 1, clock out when you finish on task 1, and then clock into task 2, clock out when you finish task 2. So you've got the full hours worked, but you've also got the breakdown there. So that's another, I guess, idea that you can use, which again, it develops a QR code every time you add in a location. So you could do up your QR code for, task 1 and a QR code for task 2. The employees scan that as well. That's another option. So you can really use this to, really there's so many different industries that are using Blip because you can tweak it to however you're wanting to track the data. And as I was saying earlier, it might be something that you start with sort of a more simple way, a general way to just track the hours, but then maybe as you and the team get comfortable with it, you're going to find a few ways that you can actually be using it to give you more data that you might be needing in the long run, or you might be getting from elsewhere. Maybe you're able to log that through here. Okay, couple of other things before we wrap up for today. So we've been on those bottom options here, the home button. We've looked through the who's in, the settings. So the settings is where I showed you to switch on and off the flexible clocking in that company settings tab. But you also have the app settings section, which is where those reminders come in. So how it was telling me that I might want to clock out at 5 p.m, the end of my shift. That's through here. So if you can see, I'm on the smart reminder. So if I have a roster done up for me in the Bright HR side of things, or if I am a permanent employee with a working time pattern that tells me I work a 9 to 5 shift every day, each day sort of thing, then this is going to pull from the Bright HR side and tell me, hey, Michelle, you usually finish at 5 p.m. today, or hey, Michelle, you have a shift that finishes at 3 p.m. today. That is going to send me my reminders based on those components. The manual option is where you can just put in how many hours a day you work. So if you're starting sort of irregular times or whatnot, that's fine. You can still get the reminder. But if you do generally like an 8-hour day, you can put that in there and let the system remind you when it's been the 8 hours. You do have the option to switch it off. I'd recommend that you wouldn't have that. And I will say that this is individual. So you may need to sort of get the employees, maybe you're going to do like a team meeting, a group meeting, get the employees opening their apps because they will need to select the correct function here. Now it is defaulted to the smart option. So if you've got a roster in place for them, or if they are a fixed permanent employee, then you would have set up a time pattern. They'll get their reminders from there. The same with the break. So it does default to a half an hour unpaid break. If you have something different, you're going to want them to open it up and adjust that through there so they can get those reminders as well. Okay, so reminders in the settings section. I'm going to click to the More button next. So I just want to show you here a few of the other things. So you do have the access point to switch to the other apps. If you've got the health and safety component or you've got Bright HR, there's the other apps listed there. I'll start from the bottom up. So you've got the log out button there. That's a nice and easy one. If you're needing to log out for whatever reason, you have that there. You're probably not going to need to log out. You will want to keep it logged in so those notifications are coming your way. The only reason some people might log out is if you're going to use Blip on, let's say, like a tablet or a phone that you're going to make a little bit kind of communal. So if you do have like an office space or a factory base sort of section, and instead of having the employees use their own individual devices, you want them to clock in and out from a tablet that you will set up, then it will be important that they do log into the app with their details. So once you've registered them on Bright HR, those details, they'll log into Blip, they'll click their clock in button, but then they will need to come here and click log out. So then the next person can come in, use their details to clock in, then they will log out and so forth. So really the log out button might only be sort of relevant if you're going to be using like a communal logging in and logging out device. You have the about section there, which is just sort of the details of the app versions and things like that. So sometimes if you're calling up, we might ask you for what version of Blip you're using. You can use that about section. The support and feedback is exactly as it suggests. It takes you through to some training courses, and you can, not training courses, sorry, some user guides. Essentially could be training resources, and the feedback section, if you've got feedback on how the system could be better in your view, you can put it through there, because I will say Blip is having a bit of work happening at the moment. So we are hoping for an update to come in the very near future that I think a lot of people have been requesting. Continue to put that through the feedback section because we're listening to it, we're making those improvements. The location section we looked into, so that's where you're going to add your locations or find your QR codes and all the addresses you've added in. And then you have your history. So we haven't talked about history. I'm going to click into the history side of things. This is where you're going to see your clocking in and out history. Now you can see that I've been playing around with it today. I played around with it the other day as well. So I do have some shifts in here. Now, when you click into history, it's automatically going to show you your history, but obviously you might want to change to see one of the employees' histories. That's when you can click on the pink icon of the little people layout, and it will give you the option to select which employee. So let's go across to Charlotte, for example. We clocked her in and out today, so you can see that shift in there. If you're needing to change the date, so at the top of the screen, you can probably see 6th of October to the 13th of October. So you could click into the little calendar in the pink button and you could adjust those dates if you needed to. I'm going to leave it as is because what I wanted to show you is if you're wanting to view more about a particular shift, you can click into this one here. So I'm going to click into the 13th of October shift, and you can see a few more details there. You can see where I've clocked in and clocked out by manager. You can see there. You can see that I can add breaks, I can add notes, and I'd have a summary of what's happened. You also have the pink pencil there to make any adjustments to the shift as well. Okay, so this is where I was saying the notes section, if you were detailing notes during, after the shift, this is where you'll come into the history section, whether it's for yourself or for your employees, keeping in mind your employees will only see their own shifts. Okay, perfect. I've just got a question come through. What if the worker gets a paid 30-minute break? So at the moment with Blip, we do only track the unpaid breaks, so it gives you that separate column of information. If you're wanting in a way to log the paid break, I would be saying that you would refer it to the notes section, just because anything that is put into the break section will be sort of, you'll have a column that then deducts that break. So if it is a paid break, you don't want them to log it as the start break, end break button I showed you earlier. You'll probably just get them to leave in notes, took 30-minute break or including 30-minute break or something like that, so you can get their acknowledgement that they took that break. What I will say is happy to relay that back as feedback again for some aspects that Blip can maybe look to in the future, but at the moment we are going to be logging unpaid breaks. I'm going to head back now. So we were on this employee's profile. I'm going to click back to myself, and you'll see all my different clocking in and out times. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention from here is if you do need to make an adjustment, we were saying before, so what I might do is I might adjust the shift that I had here on the Wednesday, for example. I click into the shift I want to adjust. Okay, you can see the breakdown of what I've put in, no notes in that one, how long it was, where I clocked in and out. Now, keep in mind that location element works the same for the flexible clocking as well. So yes, you're giving the employee the onus to clock in and out wherever they're starting or finishing for their day. But if you have that need to, I guess, for health and safety, or you're getting sort of word that they aren't where they should be when they're starting their day, you can always come in and check that clocking in and out aspect as well to see where they were on that said date or when they clicked clock in. All right, now if I wanted to adjust something with this time, so let's say I was actually supposed to clock out at 2:50 p.m. I can click the little pink pencil here on this clocking schedule, and then I can click onto the clock out time and I can adjust this back to 50 and click OK. Perfect, it's going to update through there. Now, you can see here that it's got conflict has come up. So you will see that if you're trying to adjust it to something that is obviously impacting. So it's told me there, I actually ended up finishing my break at 2:52. So I can't actually clock out at 2:50. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna just, for the sake of showing you this one, let's say I actually needed to clock out at 2:55. Perfect, so you can see there. So if there is something that overlaps, for that instance, I probably would have gone into the break and shortened the break to then save it into place. If it's, you know, obviously I'm playing around here with the different clocking in and out times, but I can save it into place with the check button on the top right. Now, I've done that from an admin perspective. I will say the employees can go in and do the same thing. They can go in and adjust their clocking in or clocked out time. So if they clocked in at 9:10, but they were supposed to clock in at 9, they can go in, they can adjust that. But what that will do is it's going to send yourselves a notification, your admins, a notification to say, hey, Michelle is requesting an adjustment. And then that you will be able to find, if I click back to the More button on the bottom right, you might have noticed the adjustment request section. So any requests for changing times will fall into here. Okay, I don't have any at the moment, so I don't have the ability to show you, but it is what I just sort of did on my clocking in and out time. It'll just show up here as Michelle's requesting this time change, approve or decline. Now, in doing so, the employee actually has the ability to leave notes as well. So if they're saying, forgot to clock in for 10 minutes or whatnot, they can leave that message there. But obviously you also have the ability to chase up the employee if there is anything sort of that lingering that you're needing to clarify. Okay, but your employees can adjust their own clocking in and out times just as well as yourself. The only difference is anything the employee does will come through to yourselves as admins to approve. Okay, I'm going to head back to the home page. That's everything that I was wanting to talk through today to give you a bit more of an overview of Blip, because I know when we do our onboards with you, we do focus sort of at a high level of what Blip can do. We don't always get the time to jump in and add a location or show you where the flexible clocking is. We talk a bit into it, but we're not necessarily jumping in and showing you the mobile app. So that's what these webinars have been for. So I hope that you found today sort of insightful or helpful in sort of seeing the mobile version of it and getting to talk about different options and different techniques you can use. We are coming up to the end of the session, so I will ask if there are any other questions, just to pop them into the little questions section you should see somewhere on the page. If you've got questions coming up, feel free to pass them through now, but also we're here ongoing. So if you're going to now go away and try and set up your Blip app or have a bit of a play around, you're always able to give us a call. We can brainstorm those ideas. We can talk into something that we mentioned today. If you wanted clarification on something, you can always call in as well as you're using it. But yeah, hopefully today's given you a bit of a next step to get into the Blip app and trial it out. And by all means, it doesn't mean that everybody needs to be using the Blip app from the get-go. You are able to have 1 or 2 people trialing it out, build a bit of that data into the system, get some feedback from 1 or 2, you know, whether it's management or whether it's an employee that you want to sort of trial out with. Get them trialing it, build that data in there, get some feedback, trial the different ways, trial your QR codes, trial your geolocations. And then when you find something that might be a little bit more suitable, or you've practiced with it, maybe then you're going to engage a few more people to join in. But it doesn't mean that you need to have everybody up and running on it by the end of today. By all means, take it at the pace that suits you, and please do reach out if you have questions coming up, because that's what the team are here for. We're here to assist along the way as well. Okay. But I'm going to leave it there for today. I appreciate you all hopping in and letting me take you through that setup. We will continue to be doing more webinars as well, so we'll keep you engaged. You probably saw maybe this come through in an email or maybe during an onboard, so we'll continue to mention those there, covering a few different topics. But this is one that's always highly requested, so I'm glad that we've been able to do some here for you today. But appreciate you all sitting in. I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. And if there are any other questions, please reach out to the Bright HR team. We're happy to help. Have a good afternoon, everyone.